Tahoe's ship shuddered as it tumbled through the wormhole. Warning lights flashed across the control panel. The small research vessel wasn't designed for this kind of stress. He frantically tapped at the navigation console, trying to stabilize the craft, but it was no use. The wormhole had malfunctioned, spitting him out in a completely different solar system than intended. "Emergency protocols engaged," announced the ship's eye, scanning local space for habitable zones. Tahoe's heart sank as the scan results appeared on the main screen. Only one planet in this system fell within marginally survivable parameters, and it was exactly the planet he had been warned to avoid throughout his academic career. Earth. Classification: Death World 12. "No, no, no," Tahoe muttered, his pale blue fingers working desperately across the controls. "Plot course away from Earth. Maximum distance." Unable to comply, the AI responded. "Engine failure imminent. Gravitational pull of nearby planet already affecting trajectory." Through the viewport, Tahoe could see the blue-green world growing larger. His species had extensive records on Earth, all of them terrifying. Crushing gravity, corrosive oxygen atmosphere, extreme temperature variations, aggressive apex predators, and worst of all, humans, bipedal creatures who had somehow evolved to thrive in conditions that would kill most sentient beings in the galaxy. Tahoe pulled his environmental suit from the emergency locker. The specialized protective gear was his only hope for survival. The silver material felt flimsy in his hands, but he knew it contained advanced technology designed to shield against hostile environments. "Impact with planetary atmosphere in 5 minutes," the AI announced calmly. "Recommended action: secure yourself in crash position." As Tahoe struggled into the suit, he glanced at the ship's database one last time. The information scrolled across the screen. Earth. Avoid at all costs. Gravity 2.3 times homeworld standard. Oxygen levels toxic to most species. Temperature range extreme. Indigenous dominant species highly territorial and unpredictable. No diplomatic relations established. The entry included a notation that his people had once considered Earth for colonization, but had abandoned the idea after initial surveys. The planet was simply too hostile. The ship began to shake violently as it hit Earth's atmosphere. Tahoe secured his helmet and activated the suit's systems just as the heat shields began to fail. The AI's voice crackled through the ship's speakers one last time. "Emergency landing protocols engage. Survival probability: 17%. The impact came faster than expected. Tahoe was thrown against his restraints as the ship plowed into dense forest. Metal tore and systems exploded around him. Something struck his helmet, and darkness followed. When Tahoe regained consciousness, sunlight streamed through a crack in the ship's hull. His suit had automatically tightened around his body, protecting him from the worst of the impact. The environmental readings on his helmet display were flashing red. Gravity. Warning. Atmospheric toxicity. Critical. Radiation. Elevated. Temperature. Unstable. Tahoe carefully unbuckled himself and surveyed the damage. The ship was beyond repair. The communication array was destroyed, along with the engines and life support systems. He was stranded on the most dangerous planet in the charted galaxy, with only his environmental suit between him and certain death. Outside, Earth's sun beat down mercilessly. Tahoe had never felt such gravity before. Each movement required concentrated effort. His 3-jointed legs trembled under the strain as he collected what supplies had survived the crash. "Need to establish shelter," he whispered to himself, voice raspy from the crash. "Need to hide." His scanner picked up signs of a human settlement 7 kilometers to the north. Too close for comfort, but far enough that they might not have noticed his crash. Tahoe packed the survival kit, a portable laboratory, and what remained of his food supplies. With one last look at his ruined ship, he headed south, away from the humans. The forest was alive with sounds and movement that made Tahoe jump at every turn. Tiny flying creatures buzzed around his helmet. Small mammals scurried through the underbrush. His suit's filters worked overtime to process the overwhelming sensory data. After an hour of difficult travel, Tahoe found a small cave partially hidden by vegetation. It would serve as a temporary shelter while he assessed his situation. Inside, he carefully set up his portable equipment and ran a more detailed scan of the surrounding area. The results were worse than he feared. The closest outpost of his people was at least 12 light-years away. Without the ship's communication system, he had no way to contact them. The emergency beacon was damaged in the crash and would take weeks to repair with his limited tools. Tahoe slumped against the cave wall. "I am going to die here," he said to the empty cave. But as night fell and Tahoe peered cautiously from his hiding place, something unexpected caught his attention. In the distance, the lights of the human settlement glowed against the darkening sky. His scanner picked up electromagnetic signals, primitive communications, but surprisingly complex for a species that had never left their planet. Tahoe adjusted his viewing scope and focused on the settlement's edge. There, walking along a dirt path, was a human. The creature moved with remarkable ease in Earth's crushing gravity, breathing the toxic air without any protection. It carried a small illumination device and was accompanied by a four-legged animal. "Fascinating," Tahoe whispered despite himself. His scientific curiosity temporarily overcame his fear. How could any intelligent species evolve to thrive in such hostile conditions? As Tahoe watched, the human paused and seemed to look directly toward his position. Impossible. His suit had cloaking technology. Yet something about the human's posture suggested awareness. Tahoe retreated deeper into the cave. He would need to be more careful. His survival depended on remaining undetected while he figured out a way off this deadly planet. But a small part of him, the scientist trained to observe and learn, couldn't help but wonder about these resilient creatures who called a death world home. In the darkness of the alien night, Tahoe reviewed his options and made a plan. Tomorrow he would begin proper observations. If he was going to survive on Earth, he needed to understand what made humans so uniquely adapted to conditions that should, by all galactic standards, be impossible to endure. Tahoe crouched behind thick bushes at the edge of the forest. Morning sunlight filtered through Earth's atmosphere, creating what the humans might consider a beautiful day. To Tahoe, it was just another cycle of survival on this hostile planet. 7 days had passed since the crash. His makeshift shelter in the cave now contained organized research equipment salvaged from his ship. The walls displayed digital notes on human behavior patterns and local flora and fauna. Every observation could be crucial to his survival. His suit gave a soft beep, indicating it had completed another atmospheric analysis. The results hadn't changed. Earth's air remained a toxic mix of nitrogen, oxygen, and various trace gases that would burn his respiratory system within minutes of exposure. "How do they survive this?" Tahoe muttered, watching the human female jog along a path near the forest edge. Not only was she moving rapidly in Earth's crushing gravity, but she was also deliberately exerting herself, breathing deeper of the corrosive atmosphere. Illogical. His food supplies were diminishing rapidly. The synthetic nutrient packs from his ship were meant for emergency use only, not long-term survival. According to his calculations, he had approximately 12 more days before starvation became a serious concern. Tahoe had been documenting potential food sources, but the options were limited. Most Earth plants contained compounds toxic to his biology. He had identified 3 moss varieties growing on the north side of trees that his scanner indicated might be safe, but he wasn't desperate enough to try them yet. Movement caught his attention. Through his observation scope, Tahoe watched humans gathering at what appeared to be a communal water source. They filled containers with liquid that his scanner indicated contained millions of microorganisms, yet the humans drank it freely, without filtration or sterilization. Their immune systems must be extraordinary, Tahoe noted in his research log, evolved in response to constant biological warfare from their environment. Later that day, Tahoe observed humans consuming food in an outdoor gathering area. They ingested both plant and animal matter, often on the same eating surface. Some foods were thermally processed, others consumed raw. The variety was astounding. Most sentient species in the galaxy had highly specialized diets. These humans appeared to be true omnivores, capable of deriving nutrition from almost anything. Their digestive adaptability might be key to their success on this death world, Tahoe recorded. As darkness fell, Tahoe retreated to his cave. The temperature was dropping rapidly, another deadly feature of Earth. Most civilized planets maintain stable temperatures through atmospheric control systems. Earth's wild fluctuations between hot and cold would kill most galactic citizens within a single planetary rotation. His suit's thermal regulators hummed as they worked harder. The battery wouldn't last forever. Tahoe checked the power levels, 79% remaining. He needed to conserve energy whenever possible. A strange sound outside the cave made Tahoe freeze. Something was approaching. He activated his cloaking technology and pressed himself against the wall, hand hovering over his defensive weapon. A white, four-legged creature appeared at the cave entrance. Tahoe's database identified it as a dog, a domesticated Earth predator often kept by humans as companions. This one wore no collar, suggesting it might be wild or abandoned. The dog sniffed the air, its head turning directly toward Tahoe despite his cloaking technology. Earth creatures had surprisingly keen senses. The animal made no aggressive moves, however. It simply sat down and watched the spot where Tahoe stood. "Your olfactory capabilities are impressive," Tahoe said quietly, "but I cannot risk discovery." To his surprise, the dog's tail began to move back and forth. It made a soft whining sound that didn't register as threatening on Tahoe's emotional analyzer. After several minutes of this standoff, the dog lay down at the cave entrance, still watching Tahoe's position. It seemed content to simply observe him, much as he had been observing the humans. The next morning, Tahoe awoke to find the dog gone, but a small dead animal had been left at the cave entrance. His scanner identified it as a rabbit, a local herbivore. Was this some kind of offering? Tahoe carefully examined the carcass. While he couldn't consume Earth meat directly, his portable synthesizer might be able to extract amino acids compatible with his biology. Unexpected development, Tahoe noted in his log. Local predator appears to have initiated resource-sharing behavior. The dog returned that evening, and again the following day. Each time it brought small offerings, sometimes dead animals, once a cluster of berries that Tahoe's scanner identified as non-toxic to local wildlife. By the 10th day, Tahoe's food situation had become critical. His remaining nutrient packs would last only 2 more days. The synthesizer had extracted enough compatible compounds from the dog's offerings to create one emergency meal. He would need to risk consuming local resources soon. "I am naming you companion," Tahoe told the dog during its daily visit. "Your assistance, while primitive, is appreciated." The dog wagged its tail, as if it understood. Tahoe's observations of humans continued. He documented their resilience to injury. A human child fell while running, scraped its external membrane. Skin, they called it, leaked red fluid briefly, then continued playing as if nothing had happened. Their biological repair mechanisms were remarkable. He recorded their social structures, their use of primitive but effective technology, their apparent emotional attachments to each other. Most surprisingly, he noted their constant adaptation to changing conditions without any sign of distress. When rain fell, pure dihydrogen monoxide, caustic to many galactic species, the humans simply covered themselves with protective layers and continued their activities. When the sun beat down with dangerous radiation levels, they applied primitive chemical barriers to their skin and seemed to enjoy the exposure. On the 14th day, Tahoe's suit gave its first critical warning. The filtration system was beginning to fail. Without repairs, he would be exposed to Earth's toxic atmosphere within days. The materials he needed could be found in human dwellings, but obtaining them meant risk of discovery. As Tahoe sat in his cave contemplating his limited options, Companion trotted in and dropped a small object at his feet. It was a piece of human technology, a small communication device, likely dropped by someone walking in the forest. Tahoe carefully examined it. Though primitive, it contained components he might adapt to repair his suit temporarily. For the first time since the crash, Tahoe felt something close to hope. Perhaps, he said to companion, who watched him with attentive eyes, survival on this death world is not impossible after all. The warning lights on Tahoe's environmental suit flashed red. After 23 days on Earth, the life support systems were failing beyond his ability to repair them with salvaged materials. The oxygen filters were clogged with Earth's corrosive atmosphere, and the power cells were draining faster each day. Status critical, Tahoe muttered to himself, examining the diagnostic readout. Estimated system failure in 48 hours. Companion, the white dog who had become his unlikely ally, sat at the entrance of the cave, head tilted as if understanding Tahoe's predicament. The animal had proven remarkably intelligent, bringing small objects from the human settlement that sometimes contained useful components. But Tahoe needed more sophisticated technology to survive. He had been observing one particular human dwelling at the edge of the forest. Unlike the others, this one stood alone, separated from the main cluster of buildings. A single human male lived there, older than most, with silver hair and a habit of looking at the night sky through a primitive telescope. This human had books about space and strange mechanical devices scattered around his dwelling. If any human might react with scientific curiosity rather than fear, it would be this one. I have no choice, companion, Tahoe said, gathering his essential equipment. I must risk contact. The journey to the isolated dwelling took longer than expected. Tahoe's suit was operating on minimal power, forcing him to move slowly through the forest. Night had fallen by the time he reached the building's perimeter. Lights glowed from inside and through a transparent barrier, a window, his database supplied. Tahoe could see the older human sitting in a chair, reading from a bound collection of papers. Companion ran ahead, scratching at the door to the dwelling. The sound alerted the human, who looked up with surprise. What are you doing here, pup? The human called out, setting down his reading material. Tahoe remained hidden as the human opened the door. Companion entered the dwelling, but then immediately turned and barked in Tahoe's direction. The human followed the dog's gaze, squinting into the darkness. Is someone there? He called. I can see something moving. Tahoe's suit gave another warning beep, loud enough for the human to hear. The human took a step back, reaching for something inside the dwelling. A weapon, perhaps. It was now or never. Tahoe disengaged his cloaking technology and stepped into the pool of light spilling from the dwelling. The human's reaction was immediate. His eyes widened, and he dropped the container he was holding. It shattered on the ground, spilling dark liquid across the entrance. I require assistance, Tahoe said, his translator converting his natural vibrations into human speech patterns. My environmental support systems are failing. I mean no harm. The human stood frozen, mouth open, one hand gripping the doorframe. You're not from here, the human finally said, stating the obvious. Correct. I am Tahoe, xenobiological researcher. My ship crashed 23 standard rotations ago. Your planet's conditions are hostile to my biology. Without repairs to my protective systems, I will die. The human's scientific curiosity seemed to overcome his shock. He straightened up and adjusted the transparent devices perched on his nose. Visual aids. Tahoe had observed many humans using them. I'm Chuno, the human said. I taught science to young humans for 40 years. I've always believed we weren't alone. He hesitated, then gestured inside. You better come in before someone sees you. The interior of Chunho's dwelling was cluttered with books, papers, and various mechanical and electronic devices. One wall was covered with images of stars and planets. Another displayed what appeared to be educational certificates. Your suit is failing, Chunho asked, examining Tahoe with undisguised fascination. Yes, the filtration system cannot process your atmosphere indefinitely. The materials are incompatible with prolonged exposure to oxygen at your concentration levels. Junho nodded slowly. I have a workshop in the basement. I repair old electronics as a hobby. Maybe we can figure something out. The human's workshop was remarkable for its primitive but creative organization. Junho moved with surprising efficiency, gathering tools and examining Tahoe's suit specifications on the portable display. Fascinating technology, Junho muttered. The principles are similar to our filtration systems, just far more advanced. I think we could adapt some HFY filters as a temporary solution. Tahoe was surprised by the human's quick understanding. Your species shows unexpected technical aptitude, despite your isolation from galactic civilization. Junho smiled. We make do with what we have. Necessity drives innovation. He carefully opened a panel on Tahoe's suit and examined the damaged filtration components. Why is our planet so dangerous to you? It seems perfectly normal to me. Your normal is exceptional in galactic terms, Tahoe explained. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world. The gravity, atmospheric composition, temperature variations, radiation levels, and biological diversity create conditions lethal to most sentient species. Yet here we are, billions of us, living without any special equipment. Junho said, connecting a modified filter to Tahoe's suit. I never considered that we might be the dangerous ones. 3 hours later, Tahoe's suit showed improved function. The makeshift repairs weren't perfect, but they extended his survival window by approximately 2 weeks. It was more than he had hoped for. I cannot return to my shelter in the cave, Tahoe said. The journey would deplete the energy I must conserve. Junho nodded. You can stay here. I live alone since my mate, my wife, died 2 years ago. The basement is private. No one comes here except the delivery person once a week. Others of your kind would react negatively to my presence. Some would welcome you, Junho said carefully, but many would fear you. And your government organizations would certainly take you away for study. They fear what they don't understand. In the days that followed, Tahoe and Junho established a cautious routine. During daylight hours, Tahoe remained hidden in the basement, documenting his observations and gradually teaching Junho about galactic civilization. At night, they would sometimes sit in Junho's backyard, looking at the stars while Junho explained human culture and history. Your species is remarkably adaptable, Tahoe noted one evening. You survive conditions that would kill most galactic citizens, yet you consider it normal. Perhaps that's our special talent, Junho replied, adapting to whatever comes our way. Their peaceful arrangement ended abruptly 1 week later. A vehicle with official markings parked outside Junho's dwelling. 2 humans in uniform approached the door. They're government officials, Junho whispered urgently to Tahoe, who was watching from the basement window. They must have detected unusual energy signatures from your equipment. As Junho went to answer the door, Tahoe realized their brief period of peaceful exchange was over. Now the real danger would begin, for both of them. The government officials left after 30 minutes of questioning Junho, but Tahoe knew they would return. From his hiding place in the basement, he had heard enough to understand the danger. They had detected unusual energy readings consistent with non-Earth technology. They didn't believe my story about amateur radio experiments, Junho said when they were finally alone. They'll be watching the house. We need to leave tonight. Tahoe's repaired suit gave a soft warning beep. My power reserves are at 43%. Extended travel will be difficult. Junho moved quickly around the house, gathering supplies into a worn backpack. I have a former student who might help us. Minji works at an environmental research station about 60 kilometers from here. It's isolated, away from cities and surveillance. As darkness fell, they slipped out through Junho's back door. Companion followed silently, seeming to understand the need for stealth. They avoided the main roads, traveling instead through forest paths that Junho somehow navigated despite the minimal light. How do you find your way in such darkness? Tahoe asked, his vision enhanced by his suit's systems. I grew up in these woods, Juno replied simply. Some things you never forget. They traveled through the night, stopping only when Tahoe's suit required brief recharging periods using the portable solar collector Juno had modified from his home devices. By dawn, they'd reached a small road where Junho used a communication device to contact his former student. An hour later, a vehicle appeared. A young human female stepped out, her eyes widening at the sight of Tahoe. Professor, when you said you had a unique visitor, I didn't expect. Her voice trailed off. Minji, this is Tahoe. He needs our help, Junho explained. The authorities are looking for him. To her credit, Minji recovered quickly from her shock. Get in. The research station is private property with restricted access. We should be safe there, at least temporarily. The research station was a collection of small buildings nestled in a remote valley. Solar panels covered the roofs, and various scientific equipment dotted the surrounding area. Minji explained it was a long-term study site for climate research, staffed by only 3 people. This is Dongyun, our computer specialist. Minji introduced a young human male who stared openly at Tahoe. I knew it, Dongyun whispered. I always said we weren't alone. For 2 days, they remained at the research station. Tahoe shared his knowledge of galactic civilization, while Dongyun helped repair and improve his environmental suit. Minji, with her knowledge of Earth's ecosystems, was fascinated by Tahoe's explanations of how unique their planet was in the galaxy. Your world is exceptional, Tahoe told them. Most habitable planets have stable conditions, limited temperature ranges, consistent atmospheric composition. Earth is chaotic, unpredictable, and somehow produces life that thrives on this instability. On the 3rd day, their sanctuary was discovered. The alert came from automated sensors Dongyun had placed along the access road. 4 vehicles approaching, he announced, showing them the security feed. Government plates. They found us. How? Chun-O wondered aloud. My equipment, Tahoe realized. The energy signature is distinctive. They must have detection capabilities more advanced than I expected. They fled through the back of the research station, taking only essential supplies. Donghyun led them to a hidden trail that wound up into the mountains behind the station. There's an old mine system up there, he explained. The government doesn't have it on their maps. We used it for some underground water studies last year. As they climbed higher into the mountains, Tahoe made a surprising discovery. Each time, he had to briefly remove his helmet to replace filter components. The exposure to Earth's atmosphere seemed less immediately harmful. His respiratory system burned, but not as severely as during his first days on the planet. Interesting, he noted to Juno during a rest break. My biology appears to be developing limited adaptation capabilities. Evolution in action, Juno replied with a smile. Life finds a way. The mine provided temporary shelter, but they couldn't stay long. Their supplies were limited, and the government search was expanding. Through a small communication device Dongyun carried, they intercepted official transmissions that confirmed their worst fears. They're calling it a contamination event, Dongyun translated. They classified you as a potential biological threat. Ironic, Tahoe said, considering I'm the one at risk from your environment. On the 5th day of their flight, Tahoe suggested a dangerous plan. My crashed ship contains an emergency beacon. If activated, it might reach my people. But it would also lead Earth authorities straight to us, Minji pointed out. Yes, Tahoe acknowledged, but my power reserves are down to 21%. Without proper materials for repair, my suit will fail within days. This may be my only chance for survival. The journey to the crash site was slow and dangerous. Twice they nearly encountered search parties. Companion proved invaluable, sensing the approach of humans before any of their technology could detect them. When they finally reached the wrecked ship, Tahoe was dismayed by its condition. Earth's weather had accelerated the degradation of the exposed components. The beacon is damaged, but possibly repairable, he told the humans after examining it. Dongyun, your assistance would be valuable. Working together, the human and alien managed to restore partial function to the device. As Tahoe prepared to activate it, he made another surprising discovery. My body's adaptation is accelerating, he told his human companions, examining the medical readout on his suit display. My cellular structure is showing significant changes. What does that mean? Minji asked. It means, Tahoe said with something close to wonder in his voice, that I may eventually be able to survive on Earth with minimal protective equipment. My species was never thought capable of such rapid adaptation. Junho looked thoughtful. Perhaps that's the real secret of Earth. It doesn't just produce native species that can survive its conditions. It forces anything that stays here long enough to adapt or perish. As night fell, Tahoe activated the repaired beacon. Its weak signal pulsed upward into space, calling for rescue, or perhaps bringing new danger. Within minutes, their sensors detected approaching vehicles. They've triangulated the signal, Dongyun warned. We have company coming. Tahoe looked at his human allies, these strange creatures who had helped him despite the risks. If we survive this, he said, I believe Earth's classification in galactic records may need revision. The beacon's signal reached far beyond Earth faster than anyone expected. 3 days after activation, while Tahoe and his human allies were hiding in an abandoned structure deep in the forest, the sky lit up with the unmistakable energy signature of a wormhole opening. That's not Earth technology, Dongyun said, looking up at the swirling lights visible even through the dense tree cover. No, Tahoe confirmed. That is a Galactic Union assessment vessel. He studied the pattern of the lights. Not a rescue ship. This is a threat response team. Junho looked concerned. What does that mean? It means they detected an alien signal from a quarantine death world and sent investigators to determine if there's a threat to galactic security. Tahoe's suit beeped softly as it analyzed the approaching ship. They moved quickly through the forest toward the projected landing site. Tahoe's suit was now operating on minimal power, but he had made a remarkable discovery in recent days. During brief exposures, he could now breathe Earth's air for up to 10 minutes without major respiratory distress. His body was adapting at a rate his species had never demonstrated before. Earth changes everything it touches, he had told Minji when she marveled at his adaptation. Even me. The Union ship landed in a clearing 5 kilometers from their position. By the time they arrived, 6 Union officers in full environmental suits had established a perimeter. Their weapons were drawn. Stay back, Tahoe warned his human companions. Let me approach first. Tahoe stepped into the clearing, hands raised in the universal gesture of non-aggression. The Union officers immediately trained their weapons on him. Researcher Tahoe, Science Vessel Exploration 9, he called out. I activated the emergency beacon. A tall officer stepped forward. Even through the environmental suit, Tahoe recognized the distinctive markings of a command officer. I am Commander Suman of the Galactic Union Security Force. The officer responded. Your vessel disappeared 32 days ago during a routine wormhole transit. You are in violation of quarantine protocols by landing on this planet. The landing was not intentional, Tahoe explained. My ship was damaged in a wormhole malfunction. I have been stranded here since then. Commander Suman's attention shifted to the forest edge, where Tahoe's human companions waited. You have made contact with the indigenous species. This is a serious breach of non-interference directives. The contact was necessary for my survival, Tahoe said. And they have proven to be intelligent, peaceful beings worthy of respect. The commander's voice hardened. This planet is classified as Death World 12. The indigenous species has been deemed too volatile and unpredictable for contact. Our protocols are clear. Tahoe sensed the danger in the commander's tone. The standard response to contamination of a quarantined world was often extreme, containment by any means necessary. I request you scan me before making any decisions, Tahoe said carefully. Commander Suman gestured, and another officer approached with a medical scanner. The results caused visible surprise among the Union team. "This can't be correct," the medical officer said. "According to these readings, your biology has begun adapting to Earth conditions. Your respiratory system shows modifications to process oxygen, and your cellular structure is hardening against radiation." "Impossible," Commander Suman said. "No species adapts to Death World conditions this quickly." "Yet I have," Tahoe replied. "And I believe this has implications for our understanding of Earth and its inhabitants." At this moment, Shuno stepped forward despite Tahoe's warnings. "We mean no harm," he said calmly. "We've been helping Tahoe survive." The Union officers raised their weapons again, but Tahoe moved between them and Shuno. "These humans saved my life. They protected me from their own authorities at great personal risk." Commander Suman studied the humans with obvious suspicion. "Their history is filled with violence and territorial disputes. They've nearly destroyed their own planet multiple times. They're unpredictable. They're adaptable," Tahoe corrected. "That's different." The standoff might have ended poorly if not for what happened next. Minji, watching the aliens' discomfort even in their environmental suits, did something remarkable. She approached slowly, removed her simple breathing mask, and extended it toward Commander Suman. "You're struggling with our air," she said simply. "This might help a little." The commander stared at the offered mask. "Your atmosphere is toxic to us. Yet we breathe it from birth," Juno added, stepping forward. "What you call a death world, we call home." "That's the point," Tahoe said, sensing an opportunity. "Humans don't just survive here. They thrive. They've developed technology independently that rivals our own in many areas. Their adaptability isn't a threat. It's remarkable." Donghyun joined them, holding up his modified communication device. "We've been exchanging knowledge. Tahoe has taught us about the galaxy, and we've helped him survive Earth. Isn't that what advanced civilization should do? Learn from each other." For a long moment, Commander Suman was silent. Then, to everyone's surprise, she removed her helmet. She immediately gasped at the exposure to Earth's atmosphere, but held up a hand when her officers moved to intervene. 30 seconds, she managed to say between labored breaths. "That's all I can tolerate." She put her helmet back on after 27 seconds, her face pale but determined. "And you live in this every day," she said to the humans. "Every day of our lives," Minji confirmed. Something changed in the commander's posture. "Perhaps our assessment of your species has been incomplete." 3 years later, Earth had been reclassified as a protected developing world with provisional Galactic Union status. The initial contact team had expanded to include specialists from various fields, establishing a hidden base in the mountains far from human population centers. Tahoe, now serving as the appointed cultural ambassador, stood on a hillside watching the sunset without his environmental suit. He wore only a small breathing apparatus that supplemented the oxygen mix for his still adapting lungs. His once pale blue skin had darkened to protect against Earth's radiation, and his thin frame had become more muscular in response to the planet's gravity. Minji joined him, carrying 2 steaming cups. "Still documenting our bizarre human habits?" she asked with a smile. Tahoe accepted the coffee, once toxic to his system, now a daily pleasure. His body had adapted to process the stimulant in small doses, another miracle of biology that his scientific colleagues back home were still struggling to understand. "Some mysteries of Earth I may never solve," he admitted. "Your species celebrates dangerous activities as sports. You intentionally consume substances that cause mild toxicity for enjoyment. You keep predators as companions." He glanced down at Companion, who lay peacefully at his feet, gray now around the muzzle but still faithful. "And yet," Tahoe continued, "in 3 years of studying humans, I've learned that your adaptability extends beyond the physical. Your minds adapt too. You accept new ideas, incorporate new knowledge, and adjust your understanding of the universe with remarkable flexibility." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in colors that still amazed Tahoe with their intensity. In the distance, Lights from the human town twinkled on, while further away the hidden lights of the Union base illuminated a new chapter in galactic relations. The Union scientists still can't believe you can eat our food now, Minji said, watching Tahoe sip his coffee. They can't believe many things about Earth, Tahoe replied. That's why more researchers arrive each month. Your death world has become the most studied planet in the sector. Shunho, now working officially as an educator for new Union arrivals, had often pointed out the irony. Earth, once avoided at all costs, was now seen as a potential key to understanding adaptation and survival in harsh environments. Humans, once deemed too unpredictable for contact, were now valued for their unique perspectives. Tomorrow, the first human delegation visits the Union base. Minji reminded him, "Are you nervous?" Tahoe considered the question. "No," he said finally. 3 years ago, I crashed on a planet that should have killed me within days. I survived because humans, supposedly dangerous, unpredictable monsters, showed kindness to a stranger from the stars." He looked up at the emerging stars, thinking of the vast galaxy beyond and the changes still to come. "If I learned anything from being trapped on this death world," Tahoe said quietly, "it's that monsters are rarely what they seem, and home can be found in the most unexpected places." The night air, once poisonous, now merely uncomfortable, filled his adapted lungs as Tahoe took a deep breath of his new home.